culture rants. I'm your host, Benjamin, and in each episode, we dive deep into the world of movies, cinema, and all things nerdy. From blockbuster hits to hidden gems, we explore the stories, characters, and cultural impact of the films that shape our fandom. In our very first episode, we'll be discussing the Plankton movie, an animated heap of garbage that has set the internet aflame. We'll break down the plot, talk about my thoughts, and see how it stacks up against the other films in the series. Stay tuned for an in-depth discussion, and let's get nerdy. As many of you know, my channel primarily focuses on animation and reaction videos, with a small mix of other content making up about 20% of what I cover. Given my passion for animation, I couldn't ignore this when it dropped. I had to talk about it. Unfortunately, what we have here is an absolute mess. This is the trailer for SpongeBob SquarePants 5. Sigh. Let's dive into this disaster. The Plankton movie on paper, it sounds like a fantastic concept, right? Unfortunately, the first major issue appears within the very first frame of the trailer, SpongeBob SquarePants. Now, I don't hate the character, at least, not inherently. Modern SpongeBob is a topic for another discussion entirely. However, our focus here is on this trailer, and from the outset, it's clear that SpongeBob is being shoehorned into yet another film that isn't supposed to be about him. This is the same issue that plagued Saving Bikini Bottom, the Sandy Cheeks movie. Despite the title, that film felt like SpongeBob, the movie featuring Sandy, rather than an actual Sandy movie. And now, the same thing is happening here. This is supposed to be Plankton, the movie, yet SpongeBob is immediately placed front and center. If they truly wanted to give Plankton his moment, they should step back and let him take the spotlight. What's frustrating is that the filmmakers seem aware of this problem, as evidenced by the first so-called joke in the trailer. It begins with SpongeBob acting over the top and obnoxious, something that has become a hallmark of modern SpongeBob as he sings a song that feels utterly lifeless. Then, suddenly, the screen freezes with a cheap visual effect and Plankton cuts in to declare,
"This is my movie!"
If they know this is an issue, why continue to lean into it? Speaking of issues, the voice acting in the trailer feels noticeably off. No disrespect to the voice actors, but something about the performances just doesn't sound right. Additionally, the animation quality continues to decline with each SpongeBob film. Let's compare the 5 SpongeBob movies to illustrate this downward trend. The SpongeBob SquarePants movie, a visually stunning and well-crafted film, exactly what you would expect from a theatrical SpongeBob release. Sponge out of water, while it jumped on the superhero trend of the time, it was still a fun and visually appealing film. Sponge on the Run. This film essentially copied the structure of the original movie with minimal changes. The plot can be summarized as the 2004 movie, SpongeBob and Patrick go on a quest to retrieve a MacGuffin for an undersea deity. The 2020 movie, SpongeBob and Patrick go on a quest to retrieve a MacGuffin from an undersea deity. They changed one word. And to make matters worse, the animation looked like a pre-rendered cut scene from a GameCube game, despite being released in 2020. To make matters even more frustrating, Sponge on the Run also introduced Camp Coral, a last-minute addition that completely wrecked the established canon. What was originally a short-lived, low-effort spin-off ended up being forcibly integrated into the main continuity. Saving Bikini Bottom, the Sandy Cheeks movie. This film was an absolute mess. The animation quality took another nosedive if Sponge on the Run looked like a GameCube cutscene. This one was Atari on crack. The plot was practically non-existent, cluttered with unnecessary filler, and somehow, an actual Atari game looks better than this movie did. Plankton, the movie. Instead of improving, the animation seems to have devolved even further. If Saving Bikini Bottom was the equivalent of an Atari game, this new film looks like Pong. The visuals are uninspired, the humor falls flat, and yet again, the focus is being taken away from the character the movie is supposed to be about. It's disheartening to see a franchise that once set the gold standard for animation and comedy decline in such a way. Instead of prioritizing quality storytelling and meaningful character moments, these newer films seem more concerned with rehashing tired formulas, cheap animation, and shoehorning in SpongeBob where he doesn't belong. At this point, one has to wonder, what happened to SpongeBob's golden era? That was quite a lengthy rant, and that was just about the first frame of the trailer. Let's continue, shall we? From the beginning, we see Plankton as a tiny child. However, the biology here doesn't quite add up. Given his microscopic nature, it would be more accurate to classify him under bacteria, archaea, algae, protozoa, or even microscopic fungi. Any of these would make more sense. But I digress. Back to the trailer. Plankton's goal, as always, is
World domination!
Since this is an overview, I'll highlight both positives and negatives. One aspect that stood out to me was the brief 2D animation shot. It looked fantastic and served as a reminder of how visually strong SpongeBob SquarePants used to be. However, moving on, the trailer cuts back to SpongeBob, and surprisingly, there was a line that made me laugh.
Who cares? Just watch.
It's not inherently funny, at least not to the average viewer, but to me, it felt like an unintentional meta-commentary, almost as if the executives at Paramount were telling the audience to consume whatever they put in front of them, regardless of quality. Now, as for the core plot, Plankton, the character for whom this movie is supposedly centered around, is quickly overshadowed. The joke seems to be that he's incompetent, and instead, the computer system Karen takes over the world. Suddenly, it's up to SpongeBob, Pearl, Mrs. Puff, Sandy, a side character. I mean Plankton to save the day. I have nothing against strong female leads or diverse character representation. In fact, I support it. However, in this case, it feels forced. This is supposed to be Plankton's movie, so it stands to reason that he should be the main character. Instead, the focus shifts to other characters, particularly Pearl, Mrs. Puff, and Sandy, while SpongeBob once again takes center stage. This marketing approach is misleading. It's like advertising a SpongeBob movie where the main character turns out to be Frodo Baggins. It makes no sense. Additionally, I want to address another point. When it comes to creating merchandise, incorporating popular memes can be an effective marketing strategy, as it adds a layer of humor and relatability that resonates with audiences. However, forcibly inserting memes into a movie's narrative often feels lazy and uninspired. Rather than enhancing the storytelling, it can come across as forced, out of place, and even cringeworthy to viewers who expect a more organic and thoughtfully crafted experience. Overall, this trailer seems like a chaotic mess with poor execution and misleading promotion.